Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Optimizing Mother podcast. It is an honor to be here today with a wonderful role model and woman in this community, Mrs. Laine. She's a mother, a bubby, a college teacher, and has a tremendous chus to have, Baruch Hashem, all 8 of her children on shlichus. Hello, Mrs. Laine. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. That was the biggest honor you could give me to say that my children are all in shlichus. Absolutely.
So that's actually part of the reason why I really wanted to have you on the podcast and ask you questions because, we've had all different guests and there's nothing like getting advice from a Hasidic mother and bubby who raised the family. And I was hoping to get as many nuggets of wisdom as possible from you. So let's really start with that shlichus piece. Like, Mrs. Laine, how did you raise your children that they all grew up with this passionate desire to go on shlichus?
So it's a great question. And I'm not going to take all the credit because I'm going to give a lot of credit to Beis Rivka, their school, to the Rebbe, and to all the wonderful people and the wonderful speakers. They came to Beis Rivka and spoke about shlichus. Also, my parents were shluchim, and all my sisters are, and my brother. And so they grew up in a very shlichus-oriented family. And I think they just loved it. We had an open house, and they did a lot of shlichus right here at my dining room table. I'll just tell you a quick story. I once had somebody who came here, and he looked around and said, "Oh, my, you guys are so beautiful. If you only went to public school." My daughter, who at that time was like about 14, she says, "You don't know what you're missing. We girls have a great time." So it was like ingrained in them. I didn't have to say anything. She just answered the question.
Wow. That's so beautiful. I love your fun energy in your voice. There's like this positive, chayistic excitement almost like. So I'm curious how that translated into giving over Hasidic values. Like, how did you do that with your signature, positive, bubbly way?
So that's my personality. Thank Hashem for that. So I just think that we made Yiddishkeit very, very happy. Our house was a very happy home. We made sure that even though we didn't go to movies, we made sure that we went to all the Beis Rivka productions, Beis Yaakov productions, Avram Fried concerts. Like, they never felt that they were missing anything. Yiddishkeit was beautiful, was exciting, was happy. And we also taught our children every mitzvah that they do should be done with joy. I must tell you, there are some times when, things happen. And I'll give you an example. My grandmother, Baba Mayashim, she owned Baba Mayashim Gavrelik. She used to move into my house wintertime because it was very cold in the apartment where she lived. And she only chose one bed. Which bed? My daughter's bed, because it was closest to the bathroom, older people. Anyway, after a day or 2 or 3, my daughter said, "Mommy, only my bed? Can't you sleep in another bed?" Surprise, surprise. I went over to my bubby and I said, "Bubby, when she comes home from school, give her a lollipop, give her a toy, give her a game, give her this." Before long, my daughter would come from school and say, "Mommy, is Bubby here tonight?" I wanted to sleep only in my bed. So if you raise children very positive, I think you end up having the benefit at the end.
Can you give more examples? What else did you do to make it exciting?
So Shabbos was a very, very special time at our Shabbos table. My husband would first say his little Bar Torah, and then he'd go around the room and everybody would say, those beautiful papers that they got from school. And besides that, when they were little, they put together a little production at the Shabbos table. And they would sing, of course, when they were younger, when they were over a certain age, they weren't able to do it if I had men at the table. But most of the time, I have 7 daughters, Baruch Hashem, and 1 son. So most of the time, I only had girls, Machokana girls, Beis Rivka girls, friends of theirs, out-of-town guests. So when it was just them, they literally had it all put together, like beautiful little a song and a dance that they would perform. When Shabbos was very long, and instead of hearing everybody say it's so boring, we made something exciting out of Shabbos. So I always read them a nice Hasidic story, and then I would say to them, "Okay, now make a play. And you had to see. I mean, the whole audience was Henya Laine, just their mother, right? And they would go into the closet and they would take shapes and dresses and shoes. And they put up a Broadway production. And it lasted a while. And they were so excited. And of course, I applauded them. And it was so beautiful. I once had somebody came to visit us. And she said, oh, I can't believe what you're doing. It's so brilliant. She said, I don't know what to do with my children on Shabbos. I said, why? You make Shabbos beautiful. And also, if they perform, they remember the stories. They remember to act like the tzaddikim.
Wow.
Wow. Just one more thing, if I can add, is Friday night. Of course, I love my kids to have their friends, but Torah is Torah. Halacha is halacha. And my father taught us that Friday night, a woman has to daven Ma'ariv. During the week, it's not, Shabbos and Mincha, but Ma'ariv, she doesn't have to. It's not obligated to do it. But Friday night, it's a shaila. If she doesn't daven Ma'ariv, that's where the men come home from shul and they say, Good Shabbos, you must respond Good Shabbos, because if you don't, it's a shaila if you can make Kiddush. So anyway, so Friday night, we always daven. Now, I was going to have my children daven too, even though they're playing with all their friends. So they knew already. They play, and the mommy would say, okay, lecha dodi, we have to daven. And they come with their friends, and we all sit together. We had a chazanit. We sang lecha dodi. We danced. We sang Lechuna Radana, and we danced lecha dodi. They do it now 770, but we did it in my house around my little table. Yes. So we made everything very exciting.
That's beautiful memories. And I also love how you connected giving, like with your Baba Mariasha in that way. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Any more examples of how to make giving like positive and like a good experience for children?
Why are my children the way they are? Because they saw it in the house. Because we went out of our way. Whenever there was a shiur that had to be done in somebody's house, the teachers used to say the first ones to raise their hands were the Laine children. There was one Mora, I forgot her name. She's an English teacher who said to me after my Rivki is my baby, my seventh child. When she graduated, she came over to me and with tears in her eyes, she says, I'm so sad not to have another Laine daughter. So that made me feel very good because, they went out of the way. I have one daughter who's like, they're all very nice and clean and beautiful, but one that's immaculate, like too much for me, but really beautiful. So she used to come and she'd say, Mommy, every day I have to clean out my fifth grade teacher's briefcase. I mean, like she said, can I please come out? And the teacher said to me, oh my God, where did you pick this up from? Well, the truth is she picked it up from my mother. My mother was like that, immaculate.
Wow.
So I don't know, when you instill giving in them, then you don't have to tell them anymore. You have room for one more beautiful story, incredible story.
Yeah.
So this is again, you raise your children a certain way, they just pick up things. So I get a call from a woman on the block and she says, Mrs. Laine, I want to thank you for one of your daughters. Which one? I'm sorry, I don't know her name. But I have 3 little boys and they went shopping around the corner. Now, to go shopping around the corner, you don't have to cross the street. And I said to them, please take the wagon, the food wagon, the cart. But they were embarrassed. So they go shopping and they realized that the bags were too heavy. They were little kids. So 2 of them held on to one bag and ran up Montgomery Street. And one of them stood guard. And then the other one ran. And then they kept holding on to the 2 bags. And there were 3 bags. So 1 bag, 2 of them held and ran. And then the second bag, the third. Anyway, everybody passed by and they said, oh, how cute. Well, my daughter passed by, assessed the situation. She was 16 years old at that time. And she took right away 2 of the bags because they were very heavy. The third one, she says, the 3 of you can hold it. And she walked them all the way to her house. Now, my house is in the beginning of the block. This lady lived at the end of the block. And then she dropped them off and she went home. So a woman called to tell me, I just want to thank you. Number 1, for her insight. Number 2, for nobody else bothered. There were bigger people than her, older people. She's a young girl. And I said to myself, this is great. So Shabbos, on my Shabbos table, we had a policy. We had to say something nice about every child. And I told the story. And she was beaming. I said, this is incredible. I'm so proud of you. And this is something for us to learn. So that's
a little nugget right there. You went around every Shabbos saying something nice about every child. I love that.
Yes. We tried. I don't want to say I did it every time, depending on how many guests we have, but we tried. Sometimes we do it over the dinner table. If I couldn't remember, you have to do so much positive reinforcement. Mm-hmm. And, positive reinforcement brings you positive feedback.
Right, right. I want to ask you though about something because, you're talking about positivity and you have a lot of girls, and something that I think a lot of mothers find challenging is instilling the values of tznius in a positive way. So was that tricky? Like, how did you do that?
The truth is that I think I'm an example. My mother, by the way, my mother was a very, very beautiful lady, and she wore very elegant clothes, but she spent very little. I think that seeing the way we lived, that we dressed nice and we looked presentable, and yet we were tzniusdik, I think that had a lot to do with our children. But also, I made sure, woman is called, 9 kavim of speech was given to a woman. Now, that's a mila. That's good. Because you have to say what you think. A child does not know what's in your head. They only know what you verbalize. So I would make sure to talk. And again, back to preventive. When we passed by a store and we didn't like what we saw there, I would just tell them, well, I'm sure my children wouldn't be buying this clothes. And also, I would tell them my credit card does not pay for tight, red, and short. That's it. I think that when you make it very clear that you want them to be beautiful and presentable and proud of who they are, but why do we have to copy what other people say? What the goyim, they whenever they decide what's beautiful, that's what we're going to do, chas v'shalom. Plus, also, when the Rebbe came out with the tznius talk, you remember when the Rebbe said that women who wear short dresses, it's like their whole seichel is in their feet. People don't look at them for who they are. A woman has so much more to offer. So we read that. We read that in our house. We read over and over again. And it was not only Henya Laine talking. It was the Torah talking, the Shulchan Aruch talking. I always said, we don't look at other people. We look at what the Torah says. We follow the Shulchan Aruch. That's what makes us Yidden. Just one more thing. I always encourage my children, whatever they do, they should think of the Rebbe and of Chabad. Because people look at them and they don't say, oh, this is what so-and-so looks like or wears. They say, Lubavitch. This is what Lubavitch looks like. This is what the Rebbe looks like. So it was very important for me that our children know that they represent the Rebbe, the Eibishter, and the Torah.
Wow. And what about like at that age in general, besides for clothing, teenagers? I'm trying to imagine a house full of teenage girls, Kanadhara. Any particular tips or advice on how to have a good relationship with teenagers?
So I want to tell you something. People talk about teenagers, and I was waiting for the time that they would be teenagers, whatever that's supposed to mean. I think that teenagers have a lot of koiches in them. The Rebbe said that. They have a lot of energy. And we channeled it to something good. So like if there was anything going on anywhere, it was my children who were in charge of it. Yeah, sometimes when I was upset with something they did, I would say, oh, you must be a teenager. But I think we just channeled their energy into something very positive. Whether it was to take care of the guests, to set the table. I gave them a lot of responsibility, shopping on their own. Some people are afraid, when they're younger, as long as it wasn't dangerous, we gave them a lot of responsibility. They, whether it was babysitting for our children or for neighbors. I think that if you just channel the koiches that they have into something positive, learning with a friend, being their mashpia. Also, we had a neighbor next door who was elderly. I used to take my children to her. When we grew up in Cleveland, my mother used to make sure that she used to run the Sheikh Chabad. She would make sure that we were home to give a Dvar Torah to the Sheikh Chabad to run Masiba Shabbos. I do have to tell you that every Pesach, I used to have a Sudas Mashiach in my house, and people would come with their children. And guess what? They were making a lot of noise. So who took care of the children? My children. So we gave them a lot of responsibility, and we were proud of this, and we would talk about it to everybody. So I think teenagers, that's it. Give them what to do that's positive, and they'll be happy. Another thing I do want to mention is that I was very big on saying Tehillim, Shabbos Mevorachim. When they were little, we started out with just a few prakim. When they got older, I said to them, if you say Tehillim, I will pay you per parak. And somebody said, we wanted so much money. I said, really? Don't you give your children money? At least it's for a good cause. And now when I became a bubby, I did it for more than that. I made sure that my grandchildren do Shnai Mikra Bechatamut, the Ma'aver Sedra. I had one grandson who came, he was 14 years old. He's sitting around the room Friday, and I'm like, Ma'aver Sedra? He says, what's that? That was the end of that. I said, okay. So I tell them all, anybody's Ma'aver Sedra is getting paid for me. And the last thing I want to tell you is, teenagers, for my birthday, oh, mommy, we're going to buy you this. Don't buy me anything. Learn my Tanya by heart. Now, for my last birthday, my grandchildren gave me a gift. All the grandchildren learned a couple lines of Tanya, the day of my birthday, by heart. It was the best gift I ever got. Listening to them, I was pushing in tears. So it depends what's important to you. That becomes important to them.
Right. So I love how you were saying about channeling their energy. I love that. But what are some of the things you did to build the relationship with them when they were younger so that it was strong when they were older?
So I would make sure to take them, whatever Chabad did, we were there. The Farbrengens, we were there. When they had in Manhattan, they had the Hanukkah menorah. I was there with my children. We used to make kakadei out of it. We went out of our way to make sure that our children were very, very proud of who they were and what they were doing. And another thing I did was when the children went to bed at night, I used to sit on the bed, every night another child's bed, and I would read them stories, always stories of tzaddikim, of gedolim, of tanoim. I actually learned this from my father because we had to walk in Cleveland. We walked like a half an hour to shul. And on the way, my father would always tell us stories. And we're here, Baruch Hashem, 770 is not so far, and the children went on their own. So at night, I said yes. And I also remember the Rebbe once said that you should tell children stories of tzaddikim, not fairy tale stories that are baba mices. So every night we would tell them stories, and we would take a lesson from the tzaddikim. I remember once 2 of my children were, sibling rivalry. And I'm like, okay, there goes the story. And I found a story that had to do with how one went out of the way to help the other. Remember, my daughter said to me, oh, mommy, I think I should listen to what this little girl did to her sister. And I think I was not nice what I did to my sister. So it's very important. I think that stories, proper stories of tzaddikim, they teach you how to live. Look what Rachel did to her sister Leah, how much love she had for her. Look how Sara Blau raised her children. Look how all our mamas, our tatas, look at all the tzaddikim, how they raised. Look how the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, was raised by his father. So many beautiful stories. Even when he was doing something wrong, the Frierdiker Rebbe cried before he had to admonish him. So I just think that this is what gave our children the proper chinuch and the proper way in life of how they should live and raise their children.
I'm listening to you and I hear the pride and the Chassidishkeit. How do you make them feel that you have the highest standard, but still like just normal and Chassidish? How do you do that?
So first of all, normal is what every person decides that they're normal, right? My normal follows what the Rebbe says and what the Shulchan Aruch says. So I remember when the Rebbe said that you should give your children an allowance. So 2 things. Number 1, they should give tzedakah. And number 2, they should learn how not to steal. So every Friday before we bench shlich, my children would line up to bench shlich. I always bench shlich earlier. I would give them each $1. They'd put it away. And then they would be able to give their 10 cents for tzedakah. Also, they had their own pushka with the name in it. Because remember when the Rebbe said to do that? And they would put away, they would learn how to give tzedakah, and then they would learn how to share. I remember when the Rebbe said that we should get rid of the tray for animals. People were writing to the Rebbe, they're having problems with their children. So the Rebbe said, only Torah things, let their eyes are very powerful, let them see Torah things. We took all of our toys. Listen, before the Rebbe said it, I had horses and we had bears. I mean, normal thing for those days. We took them in front of our children. We had a box. We put them in and we gave it to our cleaning lady. She was very happy. And I told them why we did it. We did it because the Rebbe wants to make sure their eyes see holy things. I remember I had a beautiful picture of my daughter holding a teddy bear. We got rid of that too. So how is it that we create a balance? Because we look and we act normal. But normal in our eyes is what the Eibishter says, what the Shulchan Aruch says, and what the Rebbe says. And you make your children proud of being normal. So that's the most important things. Just one thing I want to tell you, when they were little, and it was very hard to get snegavasa because you know how kids are. So I once had this person in my house, and she's looking at me, and she wanted to see, what am I going to do? Now, I had to make sure that my daughter would get the snegavasa, right? So I put her on the chair, and I made a little choo-choo train, choo-choo, 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 choo, all the way to the sink. And we had a little game, and we played, and of course, gets to the Negavasser. I think I did it once or twice, and then she knew already the Negavasser was on the agenda, and we don't do anything without it. We said brachas. We never ate before brachas. You know that my children used to say brachas in the morning before they ate breakfast, and then they'd come to school, and I said to them, listen, in school they say brachas, just say Hashem. Just say Hashem. But we never ate. In other words, what you instill in a child when they're younger, they'll have when they're older. Just one more thing, I have to tell you this. Speaking about being normal, I said to myself, everything I know they do right because morning I see, then they're in school. How about Krishma? What do they say for Kriya Shema Hamita? So I said to my little girl, would you like to read the Krishma to me? And she opens up Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. I'm like, excuse me? Do you know the Krishma is a little bit longer? I didn't realize that they didn't even know. So from that day on, everybody had to read a little bit. And if they read it quickly, I knew they said it. And if they did, they had to start saying it a little bit at a time. So when my children went to bed at night, I started, as the younger ones, I started saying with them, not only Shema Yisrael, but God Gedud. They knew God Gedud before they even knew how to read. They were able to say God Gedud, the whole thing, and that's it. Normal is what you make it to be normal. In our eyes, normal means what the Eibishter says, what the Rebbe says, makes you happy. Because when you fulfill the right things, it makes you content and happy. If you follow what the world out there says today, Hashem Yishmor, God protect us and help us. You know, so.
Wow. I have another question. Like, Baruch Hashem, you had a lot of kids close in age. Do you have any tips for that? Just the overwhelm from having such a big family. Like, how do you do it?
That's actually a very good question. And just in case you think that I am this superwoman, I'm not. I also had those days, but I'm very big in preventive. What's preventive? In my book, if I bought a gift, the same age, the same toy, the same color, the same ball, so nobody should fight. I want to think of everybody. You want to, you can write their name on it. If I used to love to dress my kids alike. Until they turned 12, they always wore the same dresses. Then we passed it on. I said to them, we don't throw it away. We passed it on to my sister, who passed it on to her grandchildren. In other words, you teach your children that it's important to have, but there's one more thing. I remember at a rally with Rebbe, at a rally with the children, the Rebbe spoke about, if your mother buys you a dress for Yontif and you have a friend in class who can't afford it, you will say to your mother, Mommy, buy me a dress for my friend. That was so beautiful. The Rebbe speaking to children, how to learn not to be jealous, but to give. And so that's what we did. We passed it on. We bought. When I made my daughter's wedding, at the same time, I made the wedding of somebody else. At the same time, we went shopping together.
Wow.
And I think that jealousy is only when you talk about people. Oh, why does he have more? Everything's in the hands of Hashem. Daven to Hashem, he'll give you. Why he has, that's Hashem's department. Who knows what you have? Who knows what goes on behind closed doors? Who knows what children he has? We have the biggest nachas. My husband used to say, I have 8 million because I have 8 million beautiful children till today. So buying the same things, avoiding problems, preventive, and making them very proud. I used to say to my children, sometimes we do what people tell us to do, and sometimes we learn not to do what they do. So that's important. Don't be jealous of somebody else. If it's something that you can grow with, you follow them. If it's something that's against what the Torah says, then we don't follow them.
But what about the overwhelm? Not just the jealousy of the kid. What about the juggling? How did you do it?
So I'm very big on delegating and on getting help when it's necessary. I remember when the Rebbe once said to somebody, she said, Rebbe, I'm sorry, I cannot teach anymore. I have a lot of children and I have a house to take care of. I can't. The Rebbe said, and I have to clean the house. The Rebbe says, who says that's why Hashem created you, to clean a house? Get help. And don't look in the corners when she finishes cleaning. And so I must tell you that when Hashem benched me with my first 3 children, I remember I just didn't sleep. 2 years, I just didn't sleep. It's very hard to explain to anybody how I survived. And I worked because there was no money in the house and I had to help my husband out. So the only thing I used to do is I used to take a babysitter when I was able to. And I would take a babysitter for 2 hours a day just to take my children out so I should sleep. Because once I slept those 2 hours, I was fine the entire day. So delegate. When things got a little bit easier, we'd have somebody to help to clean the house more. So how do you juggle? You juggle by saying what you can do, and whatever you can do, you get somebody else to help. Also, when my children were growing up, listen, a 5-year-old can rock a carriage, can sing a song, can sing a lullaby. Of course, we always sang, Torah is the best escheda, because that's how you raise children. Or I sang the olive base. So, yeah, that's it. How did you juggle? Help. If you needed help, you got help.
Something else I noticed about you and the Laine kids is the certain confidence. How do you give a child confidence?
Yes. So that's a great question. And I think that's very important. Number one, if you let them talk at the table, you give them confidence of getting up and speak. Sometimes, you have a child who just mamash, Rahmanas, they can't even open their mouth. They're petrified. They're scared. So that would be number one, is they have them talk at the table, or when they come home from school, ask them what they did. Let them get it out of the system. Let them talk. Also, when you let them go on their own, you let them go shopping on their own. This is very, very important. When you give them an achrayas to do something, like you're in charge of setting the dinner table. You're in charge of cutting up the salads. Give them, you bring confidence in a person, first of all, also by positive reinforcement that makes them, of course, feel. And second of all, by allowing them to do things and complimenting them. I once heard somewhere that before you criticize somebody, you have to give 5 or 6 compliments. I was thinking about that. They have a very good point. There are plenty of ways of complimenting people. When they were little, I used to have a star system. That was such an avoider. Don't ask to remember who this was. But everybody had a job. I remember Friday night, my children used to run to 770. But when I used to have a new baby, I'd say to them, you have to take a turn. One has to stay home so mommy could rest, because Shabbos was a very difficult day for me, Erev Shabbos, and watch the child. And I trusted them with, of course, not to hold the baby when they were very young, but to rock them and to tell me if the baby's crying. So in other words, if you give them responsibilities and then you compliment on these responsibilities, I think that brings a lot of confidence into the children. And tell them how lucky they are. They're born Yidden. Ashreinu matov chelkeinu. That was very big in our songs. They're Yidden. We're Fruma Yidden. We're Lubavitch. They benched us. We live in a free country. It's incredible. I just wrote a book about my mother, the Queen of Cleveland. If you read that book, The Queen of Cleveland by Henya Laine, and you see how difficult it was and how proud my mother grew up to be after all the difficulty she went through, and how she transmitted it to us, we transmit it to our children.
Wow. Okay, so Mrs. Laine, for my final question, you said so many beautiful things. And we all really try to make Yiddishkeit beautiful and inspiring, but sometimes things are hard and there are challenges, internal challenges, social challenges, external, as you get older, bigger things. How did you impart to your children the strength to overcome anything that they go through in life?
That's really a super great question. And I'm going to tell you something interesting. One of my children had a very hard time with a teacher. The teacher was elderly and she couldn't really relate. She was an old timer, from Europe. And there you said something, you were king. Everybody listened. So I remember my daughter came home and she says, Mommy, I can't deal with this teacher. And I said to her, sweetheart, she's only your teacher for this year. That's it. The semester will be over. You'll get another teacher. In life, you have to learn to live with everybody. So make the best of it. Unless Chas v'Shalom is a teacher who's physical and insults you or something, but it was just like kind of a mitzvah gerib, it wasn't exactly her type. I said, just make do with it, and then you'll learn how to live the rest of your life. And I said, you can come and talk to me, and we'll get through with it all the time. And we did. She ended up being in this entire class, and she dealt with it. I remember another story. My daughter passed by a certain house in Crown Heights, and I got a call from this woman, and she said to me, she has Nebuch, a challenged child, and my daughter passed by with her friends, and she was laughing. I said, my daughter would never, ever laugh at a challenged child. Chas v'Shalom. However, since you mentioned it, I will talk to her. So my daughter came home and I said, so how was your little walk with your friends? Oh, yeah. Oh, Mommy, we were cracking jokes. We were having such a good time. So I said, did you pass by Mrs. So-and-so's house? She says, yes, we did. Did you notice anything? Oh, she says, no, we were just having such a good time. So I explained to her what happened. And do you know, my daughter burst out crying. She said, Mommy, I would never, ever laugh at such a child. Chas v'Shalom. I said, would you like to call and tell her? So she says, no, I'm a little embarrassed. So I picked up the phone and I said to her, just want you to know that my daughter is sitting in my kitchen and crying because you thought that she made fun of your daughter and she wasn't. They were just cracking jokes. So one more I'm going to tell you. My neighbor told me that her daughter won the contest in writing. They had to write she won the contest. And when they called her up to speak, she hinted, she like stutters. So the teacher said, well, you stand here and we'll get somebody else to speak. And that person read her article and her daughter came home in tears, devastated. So I said to this woman, what did you do? So she said, I told my daughter, look how lucky they chose you. She said, I encouraged her. I said to her, it's not what the teacher did. The teacher was 100% wrong. It's how you reacted. So the challenge is how we react to anything. Do we throw salt on the wound or do we change it to something positive? And we tell them, this is a learning experience. And that's how we raise our children. Everything was a learning experience for something positive, something better we can do in life. From people, we learn what to do, and from people, we learn what not to do. And I think and I hope, Mitzvah Shem, that my children will instill this into their children too.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much for all these words of wisdom, that you impart from one generation to the next so that we can internalize and raise our children to greet Mashiach finally, see our beautiful children that we raise proud, strong, the Rebbe's daughters, the Rebbe's sons. Thank you so, so much for your time today. And thank you.
I want to tell everybody, Sara Blau, you are superwoman. I love what you do. I listen to all your podcasts and I just love them. Kol hakavod. Adiyas Goyal Tzedek. Good for you.
Amen. Thank you, everyone. And don't forget to subscribe to the Optimizing Mothers podcast, share it with your friends, and hatzlacha with raising your children. Thank you.